We are taught that sunscreen is our friend. They teach us to carry with us sunscreen whenever we leave the house in summer days or whenever we go to the beach. We're now learning more and more that we need sunscreen even throughout the year because UV rays can reach us no matter what season it is. But there's still a lot that people are not sure about sunscreen. A very common question is, what is actually SPF? What does SPF 15 mean, or or some similar questions? Sun protection factor, or SPF, means by definition that you are that much times more protected when you have sunscreen on than without sunscreen. For example, SPF means that you're 15 times more protected from UV rays than without any sun protection at all. This mostly refers to UVB rays. UV rays have UVA, UVB, UVC. UVC never reach us. UVA and UVB rays are rays that cause changes on the skin. UVB rays have a higher energy but a smaller wavelength, and they are responsible for sunburns, sun tanning. On the other hand, UV rays have a lower energy, a higher wavelength, and have a better penetration through your skin, where they cause oxidative stress and consequently other skin issues. So when talking about SPF, it is mostly related to UVB rays to prevent sun tanning and preventing sunburn. But UVA rays are actually more dangerous for our skin. So it is also good to look for another factor, which is called protection factor A. So it's the protection factor valued just for UVA rays. Products which have protection from both UVA and UVB rays are broad spectrum. There's also a lot of differences in how certain regions and certain countries treat sunscreen. For example, in the US, sunscreen is regulated as an OTC, an over-the-counter drug. So because under the regulations of the FDA, it is considered that preventing sun tanning and changes on the skin by using sunscreen, it is a physiological change. Therefore, in the US, sunscreens are treated as drugs and as such need pre-marketing approval and review. On the other hand, in the EU, they are regulated as cosmetics and have certain limitations to what they can be claimed to perform. For example, claims such as UV block, meaning that it blocks the sun, is not permitted in the EU. Claims such as 100% sunproof or sun protection is also not permitted in the EU. On the other hand, in the US, there were several attempts, and there are several new revised monographs currently reviewed to change the restrictions for sun protections and UV rays to switch their perception from being a drug to more of a cosmetic or a separate category. In Canada, on the other hand, there are two ways to regulate cosmetics, to regulate sunscreen. So first of all, you have sunscreen which falls under natural health products, and on the other hand, you have sunscreen which falls under drugs, under OTC preparations. So sunscreen that is mineral sunscreen, such as titanium dioxide and zinc oxide, they are treated as natural health products. But mineral sunscreen in Canada are treated as drugs. In China, there is also permission to use the broad spectrum label on the sunscreen. They also have pre-market approval of sunscreens, and claims that are permitted are regulated directly by the Chinese authority. When talking about sunscreen, you should know that, as I mentioned, two separate types. So there's mineral sunscreen and there's chemical sunscreen. So mineral sunscreen blocks, scatters, or reflects UV rays. On the other hand, chemical sunscreen absorbs and transforms it to energy. Mineral sunscreen has been around for a longer time. The trick with mineral sunscreen is that they more heavy. They're more difficult to formulate in terms of how they are absorbed on the skin. Usually, products with mineral sunscreens are the ones that leave the creamy, the white tone on your skin. However, there have been many improvements with nanotechnology in developing nano molecules to help remove this issue. Mineral sunscreens are of a newer generation of sunscreens, and there has been a lot of controversy on whether they should be used in such an amount as they are currently used. There are some researches on how they affect metabolic processes. For example, they are able to penetrate the skin and cause changes in the normal metabolic processes in the skin and in the human being. On the other hand, there's their environmental impact. There are some even chemical sunscreen ingredients that are currently banned in states of California because their unpleasantness and their unwanted effects on the coral reefs. There's so much that we don't know yet about sunscreen, but we're constantly exposed to information about sunscreen that we need to use as high as an SPF as we can get our hands on. However, this also poses a question of how much sunscreen do we actually need. For example, a lot of new products coming out that have 80 SPF or 70 and 60. But on the other hand, in order for manufacturers to maintain such a high level of and concentration of SPF, they sometimes have to add even more SPF than labeled in order to maintain shelf life and stability throughout the terms of best before use date. So there are still some unknowns about sunscreens, but this should not prevent us from definitely using it throughout the year.